Several years have passed. Ulum villagers began to feel the weight of Amma's final words, the curse she had whispered as the flames consumed her. She had called upon the spirits of her husband, invoking the wrath of her ancestors, cursing the village with a vengeance that would not be easily undone. She had promised that they would suffer, that their lives would be marked by the same pain and sorrow they had inflicted upon her and her children. Amma's dark dress clung to her slender frame. Her face swelled up as a sign of crying. She stared at the red earth, clutching her swollen belly with one hand and holding her daughter's small hand with the other. "Oka, where are you going? Come and look after your family. You promised me that you will come back," she cried out. Some of the women there consoled her, reminded her of the dangers of shielding tears while pregnant. Amma didn't listen to them. She continued to yell at her husband as if he was standing beside her. Jane, only 7, was silent beside her mother, her wide eyes fixed on the grave. Her father lay beneath the earth, taken from them by an unimaginable accident. He had been strong, kind-hearted, and hard-working, and now he was gone. She looked up at her mother, who had barely spoken since the funeral. She was too young to understand it all, but she knew that all wasn't well. Nothing was wrong with him on that day. He was the one that cooked food because of his wife's condition. After the birth of Jane, Oka and Amma had been looking for another child. When Oka found out that his wife was about to have another baby, he relieved her of the house chores. As usual, on that very day after making breakfast, he picked up his gallon and dashed out to the river. Jane cried to follow him. He consoled her and promised to take her another day. The same river he had been swimming. It was that river that ate him. Amma was on the mat, pleating her daughter's hair with trade, when a group of women came to her house. Without anything in her mind, she went inside and brought kola nuts for them. They blessed the kola nut, ate, and started to chat. They didn't say a word about what happened to her husband. It wasn't even in their expression. One of them commended her plaiting skills, saying that she would bring her own daughter for Amma to plait her hair. Amma, knowing fully well that she didn't know much about plaiting, laughed out loud, then said to the woman, "Are you insulting me?" The woman shook her head and replied that she was not. Amma wanted to ask them why they had visited her, but when she thought about it, she felt it was rude to ask them. While they were talking, a group of young men entered the compound again. This made Amma terrified, and she began to search for her husband. She swept her eyes across the compound. "Where is my husband?" Amma sprang up with force. "He went to fetch water from the Nge River." She studied the expression of all the women around her. "He is on his way," one of the men said with a sad expression. Looking up outside the compound, Amma saw another group with a constructed bamboo bed over their shoulder. She tried to rush towards them, but those women around her grabbed her waist, pinned her down on the earth to wail for her husband. Now she stared at the hole that had swallowed her husband, her joy and her happiness. Around them, the villagers whispered, their voices carrying through the evening air. "She's pregnant, you know," one woman murmured to her neighbor. "And with no husband now, how will she manage?" "She won't," replied another with a shake of her head. "Poor thing, she's all alone. Her husband was such a good man, a patient man. After so many years of waiting for another child, now he is not here to welcome the child," another chipped in. Amma heard their words but kept her gaze fixed on the grave. In that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness, a hollowness that extended beyond her grief and loss. She squeezed Jane's hand, her only source of comfort now. She closed her eyes, cascading tears flowed down freely like a river. As the crowd began to disperse, Okili approached, placing a hand on Amma's shoulder. Okili was Amma's closest friend, a woman known for her wisdom and compassion, but hated by the villagers. "You should rest, Amma," Okili said gently. "You need your strength for the baby. I have made food for you." "Okili, I don't want food. I want my husband," Amma cried out. "I know you don't want food, but the baby in your stomach needs it. Jane needs to eat. You have to be strong for your children, for your husband, Amma." Amma rose slowly, allowing Okili to help her, and together they walked back to her small hut. The villagers watched them go, their faces a mixture of pity and curiosity. They knew that Amma's journey was only beginning, and in a village bound by tradition and superstition, they feared for her future. Amma refused to eat, and when Okili tried to feed her, she screamed at her. Her gestures reminded her of her husband. It was only him that used to feed her. Okili breathed out gently, wiped her friend's tears. "Make him happy. Eat the food so you can save his child," Okili said, with a gentle voice. Amma ate the food absent-mindedly. After the food, Amma settled Jane into bed before lowering herself onto a mat by the fire. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the child move within her. She wondered if he would have his father's eyes, his father's kindness. But as she sat in the dim light, a sense of foreboding crept over her. She felt as if a shadow had fallen across her path, and she knew somehow that her life would never be the same. In the quiet of the night, she whispered a prayer, asking for strength, for courage, and for protection. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she vowed to face it, for the sake of her children. It was a night like any other in the village. There was no moonlight. Ominous darkness covered every part of the village. Only the sounds of night insects were heard. But inside Amma's hut, a different sound could be heard, the low, groaned cries of a woman in labor. Okili sat on a small wooden chair beside her, holding her hand and murmuring words of encouragement. The village midwife bustled about, preparing herbs and water, her face tense with concentration. The labor was long, and Amma felt as if her body were being torn apart. She gritted her teeth, tears streaming down her face as wave after wave of pain washed over her. She clung to Okili's hand, drawing strength from her friend's steady presence. "Breathe, Amma," Okili said softly. "You're strong. You can do this." "Okili, I am tired." "I cannot do it," Amma cried out. Okili rebuked her instantly. "Your mother gave birth to you. You will have your baby. Your husband is watching over you." "Push! Amma, push! I said push!" Hours passed, and at last, with a final, anguished cry, Amma gave birth. The midwife caught the baby. "Ah, gods of our land, what is this?" She held him up to the light and then fell silent, her eyes widening in shock. Okili leaned forward, peering at the newborn, and gasped. The palm oil lamp cast a yellow flame around the whole room. Amma, even in her weak state, demanded to see the baby. The baby was pale, his skin almost translucent, with a dusting of white hair on his head. His eyes, when they opened, were a soft, milky blue, unfocused and strange. Amma reached out, taking the baby from the midwife's hands, and cradled him against her chest. For a moment, all she felt was joy. She had a son, a beautiful, perfect son. She held him close, marveling at the tiny fingers that wrapped around hers, the soft, warm weight of him in her arms. But then she noticed the midwife's expression, the way Okili's face had gone pale. She looked up, confused, and saw the fear in their eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling. The midwife hesitated, her gaze flickering to Okili before she spoke. "What did you give birth to?" she said slowly. "It is a boy. Can't you see it?" Amma replied firmly. "I know he is a boy, but he is a cursed child." Amma's heart sank. She had heard tales of albinos, stories of children born with pale skin and hair, marked by the gods or cursed by spirits. Okili, her friend, was one of the women that had such children. Amma had never thought it would happen to her. But now, holding her son, she felt a chill of fear. "He's my son," she said firmly, pulling him close. "He's a gift, a blessing. I don't care what anyone says. He is my husband that came back to me to watch over his household." Okili placed a hand on her shoulder, nodding in agreement, but the midwife shook her head, her face grim. "The villagers will not see it that way," she warned. "They will say he is cursed. They will demand that he be cast out." "Remember, only cursed children came out this way," Okili said. It reminded Okili about her situation. That was exactly what kept her childless. The reason some of the villagers labeled her a witch and a cursed woman. For 4 consecutive times, Okili gave birth to a baby like that. A baby with pale skin. Those 4 children were taken away from her, killed and burnt their remnants to ashes. Okili had forgotten about everything concerning childbirth, so she asked her husband to take another wife. She wouldn't imagine it again, suffering for 9 months, and after that, the child would come out as a cursed child. Now, the bad luck had visited her very good friend, whose husband was late. How would she survive it if they took the child away from her? If she refuses to offer the child willingly, they will kill every member of her household. The villagers would label her a witch that wants to destroy the whole village because of a cursed child. Okili remembered the one that happened long ago. She was a young girl at that time, when the mother of the child refused to let go of her baby. The whole household was burnt to ashes to appease the gods for their disobedience. It happened a long, long time ago, but she saw it happen again because she knew that her friend won't be able to let go of her baby. She turned and fixed her gaze at her friend. Amma's arms tightened around her son. She would protect him, no matter the cost. She looked down at his tiny face, his eyes now closed in peaceful sleep, and felt a fierce surge of love. "His name is Nimdi," she said, her voice steady. "It means my father is alive. No matter the color of his skin, he is my husband's comeback, my son, my child, and I will protect him too. Amma, let me hold the baby. You need rest. Lie down and sleep." Okili said, the tone in her voice carrying a heavy sorrow. But Amma refused. She refused to hand out her baby to anyone, not even her best friend Okili. The midwife gathered her things, casting one last uneasy glance at the baby before leaving. Okili stayed behind, sitting with Amma as the night wore on, both of them silent, lost in their own thoughts. The moment the midwife left the compound, Amma struggled to get up on her feet, but Okili, her friend, stopped her. Okili scolded her for trying to cause harm to herself. All that she needed was rest as a woman that just had a baby. Amma knew for sure that no one was aware of the new baby except 3 of them in the hut. But soon they would know. And Amma knew, deep down, that her son's life would be in danger. As the first cock crew, news of the birth traveled quickly, and the villagers gathered in small groups, whispering about Amma and her strange child. The midwife had spread the news like a harmattan fire. The stories grew more outlandish with each telling, fueled by fear and ignorance. Some said the baby had glowing eyes, others claimed he had been born without a soul. Another set said that the baby had no eyes and hair, yet another said that the baby started walking the moment he was born. Many things were said by those who hadn't seen the baby. That early morning, while Okili was asleep, Amma took her baby and went over to her husband's grave. She swooped low, cupped some sand in her palms, prayed with the sand before splashing it on the grave. She seeks for the spirit of her husband to come and protect her and her child. She dropped the new baby on the grave, asking her husband's full support. Then she moved around the grave quietly, murmuring. The first person to visit Amma was her neighbor, Mary, a woman known for her sharp tongue and quick temper. She stood at the door, her arms crossed around her breast, a disapproving frown on her face. She swept her eyes across the room. Okili sat on the bed, holding Nena on her laps, while Amma was trying to breastfeed the baby. Mary refused to sit down. Instead, she peered through the clothes Amma wrapped the baby with, stepped back as if the very sight of the child would taint her. "Amma," she said, her voice cold. "I heard your child is not human." Amma held Namdi close, her eyes narrowing. "He is my son, and he is perfect as he is. Can't you see he is sucking my breast?" "Even dogs and other animals suck breasts," Mary muttered under her breath, then she cleared her throat. "You know what people are saying, don't you? They're saying he's a curse, a sign of ill fortune. You should have let him die at birth. Okili, you know all these. Why didn't you tell her the truth?" Amma felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce. "I will not stand here and listen to your nonsense. My son is a blessing, and I will not let anyone harm him. Okili, tell your friend the truth. This baby will bring misfortune to the whole villagers. I know your ill luck is infectious. You have transferred it to Amma." "Mary, Oya, leave my house before I do something stupid," Amma snarled, and then turned to her friend. "Don't mind this garrulous woman. Her mouth always runs like a water tap." Mary scoffed, turning on her heel and stalking away. As she left, Amma could hear her muttering under her breath, spreading the poison of her words to anyone who would listen. She knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. She had seen how the villagers treated those who were different, and she feared for her son's future. Okili patted her hand on her shoulder with the expression that said, "Calm down, everything will be fine," even though she knew that things weren't fine. Amma wiped her tears with the edge of her wrapper, placed the baby on the bed, and began to eat the jimiryoku that Okili made for her. It was a special yam with local species made especially for women after birth. Amma ate the food with great relish. The days passed, and the village's hostility grew. People crossed the street to avoid her, casting dark glances at the child she carried. They were all surprised that she had not offered her baby to ward off evil from the village. People talked about how stubborn and selfish she was to let a cursed child live. Even Jane felt the weight of their disdain, her friends pulling away from her, their mothers warning them to stay away. She came home in tears one day, clutching her mother's wrapper. A woman chased her out of her house, asking her never to step her foot into her compound again. A child from a cursed home wasn't worthy of playing with her children. "Why do they treat us like this, Mama?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why do they call my brother a curse?" Amma swooped down to her height, pulling Jane into her arms. She stroked her daughter's hair, feeling the ache of a mother's helplessness. She wished her husband was alive to shield her and her children from the cruelty of the world, but she knew it was a dream. All she could do was teach them to hold their heads high, to be proud of who they were. "They are afraid of what they don't understand," she said softly. "Your brother is different, yes, but that doesn't make him any less worthy of love. We must show them that he is just like any other child." Jane nodded, though her eyes were filled with doubt. She was too young to understand the depths of the villagers' ignorance, but she trusted her mother's words. She reached out to touch Namedi's tiny hand, marveling at the softness of his skin, the warmth of his fingers as they wrapped around hers. "Mama, Namdi wants to eat," Jane chuckled. Amma was happy that she had changed her daughter's mood. But as the days turned into weeks, the villagers' hostility grew bolder. They began to leave offerings at Amma's doorstep, strange tokens meant to ward off evil spirits. She found feathers, bones, and bits of broken pottery arranged in patterns, each one a silent accusation, pieces of different shades of clothes. She knew they saw her as a threat, a stain upon their community. The village elders called a meeting, summoning Amma to their gathering place. She arrived with Namdi in her arms, her head held high, her gaze steady. She could feel their eyes upon her, mostly on the baby. She knew the actual reason for the meeting, therefore she had to be strong. The elders sat in a circle, their faces grim, their expressions cold and sad. "Amma," the head elder said, his voice low and somber, "we have come together to discuss the future of this village. We all know that your child is a danger to us all. We have been waiting for you to offer the baby, but we can't wait any longer. His presence has brought darkness upon us, and we cannot ignore the signs." Amma's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain calm. "My son is innocent. He has done no harm to anyone. How can you accuse a child of bringing darkness?" The elder's gaze was hard. They were all puzzled by her outburst. "We have seen the signs. The crops have begun to wither. The animals grow sick. This is no coincidence. Your child is unnatural, and his presence is a curse upon this village. We ask you to offer him for the safety of us all, or are you waiting for Neine River to dry up before you do the needful?" Amma's hands tightened around Namdi, her body trembling with rage. "You are all blinded by fear," she said, her voice rising. "You speak of curses and signs, but it is your hatred that has poisoned this village. I will not offer my child for you to slither like a hen. I will not abandon my child for the sake of your superstitions." She has vomited evil, sacrilege. Did she say superstitions? Tufia aqua. The elder spat on the ground furiously. The elders whispered among themselves, their faces twisted with anger and fear. Amma knew that she was alone, that there was no one who would stand by her. She looked at the faces of those she had known all her life, searching for a glimmer of kindness, a spark of understanding, but she found none. As she turned to leave, the elder called after her, his voice echoing through the stillness. "You will regret this, Amma. Mark my words. The curse will consume you, and your child will bring nothing but suffering." Amma walked away, her heart heavy, her steps slow. She knew that the village had turned against her, that they would not rest until they took her child, but she would not give in to their fear. She would fight for the sake of her children, for the memory of her husband, for the love that burned within her heart. Okili was already at her house waiting for her when she returned. Okili already knew everything. She used herself as a case study. After her narrative, she asked Amma to offer the child willingly so that she would live. But Amma, being a stubborn woman, refused. Okili tried to dissuade her from the path she was trailing on, But Amma made it clear that she won't give her child freely like Okili did. She reminded Okili that the reason she had no child of her own, a child to fetch water for her, was because she offered all her 4 children to appease the gods. Her words made Okili sad, but she swallowed it. A woman in Amma's condition would say anything to justify herself. "Amma, I am going. Let day break," Okili said, standing up. "Let day break. Okili, Jane will come later to fetch water for you." Okili nodded her head and left. As small as Jane was, she had been the one fetching water with a small earth pot for Okili. That was why Okili referred to her as my child, and after trading in the market, she would buy smoked fish for her. Amma returned to her hut. She whispered a quiet promise to herself, vowing to protect her son, no matter the cost. That night, Amma lay awake, the weight of the villagers' words pressing down on her. She held Namdi close, listening to the sound of his breathing, feeling the warmth of his small body against her own. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that she would face unimaginable challenges. But she was a mother, and she would not rest until her children were safe. Amma sensed something ominous in the wind, a feeling that crept into her heart and took hold. She had packed all her bags, but Jane had not returned from Okili's house. Earlier, Jane had gone to fetch water for Okili. Amma wondered why she had not returned, why it was taking long. As the night wore on, Amma began to feel a strange unease. The village, usually alive with the sounds of nighttime creatures and distant laughter, had fallen silent. She felt like going out to look for Jane, but that would make Okili suspect her movement. She kept the clothes by the side, placed her baby on her beast. Perhaps Jane would return before Namdi finished with the breast. Jane was taking too long to be back. Amma paced the hut, listening to the faint sounds of the night, feeling a chill that she couldn't shake. Suddenly, she heard footsteps outside. "Finally, she is back," she muttered with the hope that Okili had brought her child back. She turned around, trying to hide the clothes and some of the kitchen utensils under the bed. Then she perceived an awful smell. Panic surged through her. She ran to her front door. The door was locked from outside. She ran back to the inner room, which was her husband's room. Everywhere was dark. She screamed, her voice raw with desperation. She clutched Namdi to her chest, rocking back and forth, whispering words of comfort, her tears falling on his tiny face. She knew she had only moments, that there was no escape, no chance of survival. Jane was about to enter the compound when she saw one of the men struck a match and set the house ablaze. She tried running towards the house, but a mighty hand drew her back, lurked her behind plantain trees. When she opened her mouth to cry, her mouth produced no sound. That same hand pressed against her mouth, stifling her cries. She fell to her knees, her hands reaching out to the place where her mother and brother were, her fingers scraping against the scorched earth. She could only watch, her eyes wide with horror. The flames rose quickly, consuming the dry thatch of the roof, licking at the walls with a terrible hunger. Jane imagined her mother's silhouette through the flames, her arms wrapped tightly around Namdi, her face a mask of despair. She watched as the fire swallowed them, the heat searing her skin, the smoke filling her lungs. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. The hut lay in ashes, the flames dying down, leaving only a smoldering ruin. The men had gone, their task complete, their faces grim and resolute. Okili woke Jane up the moment the first cock crew. Jane jerked off the bed, demanding to see her mother. Okili shook her head, tears filled her eyes. "Jane, let's go, you are not safe here," Okili whispered to Jane. It was then that the memory of what happened yesternight flashed back. Her mother and brother were burnt to death by those huge men. She saw them. She knew some of them. Okili held her left hand and both of them sneaked out of the compound. What Okili wouldn't want was for her husband or her co-wife to find out about Jane's presence in her home. It would be better for the villagers to believe that she died along with her mother and brother. Now, they stood along the narrow, bushy path that leads to the slave market. Okili knew that some of the slave masters used to pass there very early to be able to get the best slave in the market. The thought of giving a 7-year-old girl as a slave frightened her, but that was all she could do. There was no other way. Living with her wasn't an option, and there was no other place to take her that the villagers wouldn't find out. Okili's heartbeats was producing audible sounds. Her feet are tremulous. She sensed the presence of someone approaching on a bicycle. Her heart skipped, but she told herself that she was doing the best thing. What Amma would also have done for her if she was the one in such a situation. The man was huge, fierce, with an unsmiling face. The man tried to negotiate a price. Okili told him to use the money in taking care of the girl when he got home. She doesn't want money. The morning came slowly, a gray light seeping over the village. The villagers gathered around the ashes, their faces somber, their eyes averted. They whispered among themselves, their voices low and fearful, as if the very act of speaking would summon something terrible. Some of the women said that Amma deserved what happened to her. Some pitied her, while others mocked her death. All the elders were happy that they had done what was supposed to be done. They praised their ancestors, but they would not escape the curse that had been unleashed. Okili sat on top of her wooden bench inside her small kitchen. Her palms clutched on her cheeks and her gaze fixed at the path that commanded the entrance to her compound. If only Amma had listened to her. If only she had offered that child willingly. She would have been alive to take care of her daughter. Why Amma? Why would you choose death instead? She hissed, inhaled, and exhaled weakly. But wasn't Amma better off than she was? It wasn't all about being alive, it was about living for something. Okili knew that she lived for nothing. Despite being alive, nothing in that life interested her. Her only good friend was gone, her daughter sent out as a slave. On a second thought, she praised Amma for standing on her belief. Perhaps one day, the elders would realize that those children they were killing were also human beings. Normal humans with souls like them. She sighed. She blew her nose and wiped the mucus with her wrapper. Even in death, you were brave and fearless, she muttered. The slave master who bought Jane was a cruel human being. His heart was as dark as his face. He treated all his slaves like an animal. He put them under hard labor both morning and night, whipped them like cows. The type of food they fed them was the ones meant for dogs. The hut where they slept was also where their master's livestock were kept. All those things didn't bother Jane. She had other things that gnawed at her heart. She never forgot about what happened that night. The reason why she was sent to slavery. She worked hard like a horse, trying to work for her freedom. All she wanted in life was revenge. Revenge for her mother and brother. "Where is that foolish girl, Jane? Jane!" the slave master yelled one evening. Jane rushed out from where she was squeezing bitter leaves. The slave master asked her and one of the slaves to rush to the farm and harvest cassava. Night had started to wear on. Jane wondered why their master would always send them to the farm at that time of night. It was one of his ugliest habits. They had no choice, so they picked their stick basket and headed to the farm. On their way to the farm, Jane overheard two men talking about their king. The king was sick. They had consulted all the great medicine men they knew to cure him, but none of them knew the solution. The two men groaned in pain. Their king was a good man. Losing him would be a total blow to the whole community. Abruptly, Jane felt something extraordinary inside her. No slave had the right to talk to the freeborn, but Jane walked towards those men with an unflinching spirit. "I can cure the king," she muttered, her gaze steady on them. Her slave colleague covered her mouth in bewilderment. She knew what would happen to Jane if her actions reached their master's ear. She could be beheaded. "Who are you? What do you mean you can cure the king?" One of the men questioned angrily. "I am a slave, a poor slave. Take me to the king, or else you will lose him." She tucked her basket under her armpit, took about 2 paces backward. "Come back here, you poor slave. Who gave you the right to utter such rubbish? You said that the king will die, right? I will make sure you die first. Kill me and lose your king. Stop seeing me as a slave and take me to your king. I am the only one that can save him." The two men marveled at her courageous spirit, the way she spoke with authority. They whispered together. "You know what will happen if you fail to carry out your job," they warned her. The king was about to join his ancestors when those men brought Jane to the palace. The queen and elders were surprised when they heard what Jane said. The elders doubted her capabilities, but the queen took her in immediately to see the king. All she wanted was for her husband to get well. It doesn't matter who the healer was. It could be a slave, a freeborn, even a madman. Few minutes into the king's chamber, the king came out healthy and strong. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise. They stared agape. How could she have cured the king within a few minutes? What all the great Dibia in their village couldn't do in months. The queen, not minding she was a slave, hugged her very tight, thanking her for saving her husband's life. The news traveled around the whole village to Jane's master's home. People gathered at the palace that night to meet the great healer, the person who brought the dead to life. Right now, Jane had grown into a young woman, free from slavery. She lived in a small hut beside the great Ojuko River, a place where the spirits whispered in the trees and the river ran clean and cold. She decorated her hut with white chalks and feathers. She had become known as a healer, a wise woman who could speak with the spirits, a priestess in her own right. Villagers from neighboring towns came to her, seeking her guidance and healing touch. She spread a mat under one tree in front of her hut. It was on this tree that she worshipped to her gods. Red and white clothes ran around the tree. On its foot were 3 stones with blood of animals and feathers. There was also a small clay pot that contained kola nuts and other things needed for her work. Several years have passed. Ulum villagers began to feel the weight of Amma's final words, the curse she had whispered as the flames consumed her. She had called upon the spirits of her husband, invoking the wrath of her ancestors, cursing the village with a vengeance that would not be easily undone. She had promised that they would suffer, that their lives would be marked by the same pain and sorrow they had inflicted upon her and her children. At first, when the chief priest told them about the curse, the villagers dismissed the curse as the ramblings of a desperate woman, a final cry of defiance from a mother who had lost everything. But soon, they began to notice strange occurrences, signs that the curse was real, that the spirits had heard Amma's plea. It was on Ori market day. Nyene River was bustling with people. It was the day men came from different villages to fish from the river. Fishes from the river were different from other fishes, more healthy and fresher than others. The fishermen with their nets were inside the river chatting, laughing, cajoling one another. Some women were on the river bank washing their clothes while some were washing bitter leaves. Children swam from this side to that side, doing what they called run in the water. They would dive into the river, pursuing each other. Others came, fetched water, and went back home. Abruptly, like the speed of a rocket, Nyene River dried up. The very place that harbored water a few minutes ago turned into dried sand. Instantly, all the fishes died. Women screamed in their high tone, leaving whatever they were doing behind. Children cried out massively. Men stared perplexed. Some people broke their water pots on their way home. The crops began to wither in the fields, their leaves turning brown and brittle. Other small rivers ran dry, their waters retreating into the earth, leaving the village parched and desperate. The animals grew sick, their bodies wasting away, their eyes dull and lifeless. People started dying regularly. Pregnant women and children couldn't withstand the hardship. Nyene River was their main source of income. The fishes from the river was what kept many households alive. That was also why traders from different places came to their village, to trade fish and fermented cassava. It was in that river that people soaked and washed their cassava after fermenting, and that was why their fermented cassava was always different, sparkling clean. Desperation grew, and the villagers sought the counsel of their oracle, hoping for a way to lift the curse. They gathered in the oracle's hut, their faces lined with worry, their voices filled with fear. The oracle listened to their pleas, her eyes closed, her hands resting on her knees. She was an old woman, her skin wrinkled and weathered, her hair as white as snow. After a long silence, she spoke, her voice low and steady. "The curse can only be lifted by the hand of the one who holds the spirit of Amma," she said. "The one who has survived, the one who carries her blood. You must find her, and you must beg for her forgiveness. The chief priest told you people before, but you all dismissed it. Look for her." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing. "Who is she talking about?" they asked one another. "She died with her 2 children. None of her offspring is alive," one of the elders said. "Ta! Close that mouth. Who told you that she died with her 2 children? Are you here to seek for solutions or to teach me how to run my job? I am very sorry, eyes of the gods. Please forgive my foolishness. Good. You people must look for her. Look for her while there's time. Look for the black goat in the daytime. When night comes, you won't be able to see it. She is close, but she is far. Go ahead and look for her. The old priestess had confused them more with her parables. She was close, but she was far. They had thought she was a victim of the flames, but now they realized that she had escaped, that she had been spared. But how did it happen? None of them knew the answer. They all walked home dejected. The next day they set out to find her, to bring her back, to beg for her mercy. No one in the village knew her way about. They went to Okili with the hope that she was the only one who could lead them to Jane. Their hopes chartered when they learnt that Okili didn't know where she was. Okili told them that she gave her out to a slave trader, but she didn't know who the trader was or where he came from. As days passed by, the curse grew stronger, the suffering more intense. The villagers knew that they had no choice, that they would not survive unless they found her, unless they made amends for the terrible wrong they had committed. And so they searched, driven by fear and desperation, haunted by the memory of the fire, the image of a mother and child consumed by flames. They knew that they were living under a shadow, a darkness that would not lift until they had paid for their sins. The elders heard about a great priestess from a nearby village. According to their informant, the priestess could do anything. She was capable of doing everything. She was capable of bringing death to life. He narrated the story behind the king's total healing, how all hope were lost until the priestess came into the picture. The man also promised to take them to the priestess. All the villagers were happy when they heard about the news. The elders said that they would pay for any price to destroy the curse. At the first cock crew, they all set out for the journey, happiness plastered on their faces. Jane was under the tree, pouring schnapps to the gods when they came. She motioned for them to sit on a long wooden bench in front of her hut. As she approached them, she smiled, and those men smiled back. Jane entered inside her hut and came out with a calabash of kola nuts. One of the elders prayed for their gods for the success of their journey. Others echoed, Isi. After eating the kola, the chief elder narrated their predicament to Jane. Firstly, about a woman burnt to death with her son. When the elder said this, Jane had a sudden urge to descend on him, but she controlled herself. The elder told Jane that the said woman laid a curse on the whole village at the point of her death. And since then, everything had turned upside down. Their rivers, both big and small, had dried up abruptly. The rate of pregnant women and children dying was massive, the way their crops and livestock were dying. Jane listened intently. When the elder finished his narrative, she asked him what their priestess said about the issue. So the elders narrated how the priestess asked them to look for someone they don't know her way about. They don't even know if she was still alive, but that one should wait because they heard that the one in their face could do anything. Jane nodded her head in agreement. She recognized some of them. 2 of them were among those that set her mother and brother ablaze that very night. How could she not recognize their faces? Faces of monsters. She gnashed her teeth, standing up. The wounds were too deep, the scars too fresh. And so she walked on, her steps silent, her heart filled with the quiet rage of a child who had lost everything. Abruptly she turned. I cannot help you people. Her words came with finality. The elders stared perplexed. Please the priestess. You are our final hope. Our children are dying. Our pregnant wives are dying. Look for her and ask for her forgiveness. I am the priestess of vengeance. You people killed her mother and brother. Search for her when there is time. She is very close, but she is far away. That same word, very close and far, the elders thought. How could someone be close and far at the same time? They tried to beg, but she wards them off. Years passed and the village's suffering worsened. The once thriving community had become a ghost of its former self, plagued by illness, famine, and despair. The people had become shadows of themselves, their faces ashes, their eyes hollow. They lived in fear, each day a reminder of the curse they had brought upon themselves. They called her the priestess of vengeance, for they sensed a power within her. Their informant muttered. One day, as she gathered herbs by the river, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a group of villagers, their faces haggard, their clothes torn. She recognized them immediately. They were from her village, the very people who had burned her mother alive, who had cursed her with their hatred. They approached her slowly, their eyes filled with fear and desperation. They knelt before her, their heads bowed, their voices trembling. "Priestess," one of them said, her voice barely a whisper, "we have come to you, please help us. Our village is suffering, and we believe you are the only one who can lift the curse. Our children are dying." Jane looked down at them, her heart cold, her mind racing. She had dreamed of this moment for years, the day when they would come crawling to her, begging for mercy. She had imagined their faces, twisted with fear, their voices filled with desperation. She had promised herself that she would never forgive them, that she would let them suffer as they had made her suffer. But as she looked into their eyes, she felt a strange emptiness, a hollow ache that gnawed at her heart. She realized that vengeance had not brought her peace, that the suffering of her village had done nothing to ease the pain that burned within her. She turned away, her voice cold and distant. "I cannot help you. You brought this curse upon yourselves, and you must bear the consequences." Then she turned to the women. "Where were you all when she was burnt to ashes? In your bed? With your husband and children? A widow's curse is strong. Go and look for her child. She is the one capable of lifting the curse, not me." The villagers fell silent, their faces pale, their eyes filled with despair. They knew that they had no choice, that they were condemned to suffer, to live under the shadow of their own cruelty. Those unhealthy women and children suffering kwashiorkor thought that their condition would soften her heart. They had asked their husbands to stay back, with the hope that they could do it by themselves, but it was clear that she wasn't going to help them. They rose slowly, their heads bowed, their steps heavy as they turned to leave. But as they walked away, Jane felt a strange stirring in her heart, a flicker of doubt, a whisper of something she could not name. She watched them go, their figures disappearing into the trees, and she felt the weight of their suffering and despair. She knew that she held the power to lift the curse, that she could bring peace to her village if only she had the strength to forgive. But forgiveness was a distant dream. She had lived with her anger for so long, and had nursed her hatred like a wound that would not heal. Their sufferings reminded her of what her mother had suffered that night. She remembered when her mother was pleading with them, begging them, yet they burnt her alive with Namemdi, her only sibling, her brother. She turned back to the river, her heart heavy, her mind filled with questions. She wondered if she would ever find the strength to forgive, if she could ever let go of the past, if she could ever heal the wounds that had shaped her life. Their suffering reminded her of what her mother had suffered that night. She remembered when her mother was pleading with them, begging them, yet they burnt her alive with her brother. That night, Jane lay in her hut, her body wrapped with her yellow wrapper, her mind restless. She closed her eyes, willing herself to sleep, but her thoughts were filled with images of the villagers, their faces twisted with fear, their voices filled with pleas. She felt the weight of their suffering, the burden of their guilt, pressing down upon her like a stone. Then the images of those orange flames that consumed her mother and her brother. As she drifted into sleep, she felt a presence beside her, a warmth that filled the room, a familiar scent that brought tears to her eyes. She opened her eyes to see her mother standing before her, her face gentle, her eyes filled with love. "Mama," she whispered, "is it really you?" Her mother smiled, reaching out to touch her face, her fingers warm and soft. "Yes, my child, I have come to you in your dreams, to speak with you, to guide you." "Why now, after so many years? I have been expecting you." Jane felt a wave of emotion wash over her, a mixture of joy and sorrow, love and pain. "I am here now," her mother said. "I have missed you so much, Mama," she said, her voice choked with tears. "I have carried your spirit with me, felt your presence in my heart. I have lived with your memory, but it has brought me no peace." Her mother nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I know, my child. I have watched over you, seen the path you have walked, felt the weight of your sorrow. I know that you have suffered, that you have lived with the burden of my death, the pain of your loss. Now I'm here to set you free." Jane looked away, her heart heavy, her voice barely a whisper. "They came to me today, the villagers. They begged for my forgiveness, for the lifting of the curse. But I could not forgive them. I could not bring myself to let go of the anger, the hatred that has defined my life. I don't want them to know that I am the one they have been searching for. I want them to suffer like you did, like Namdi suffered, like I am suffering." Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch light and comforting. "I understand your pain, Jane, but forgiveness is not a gift you give to others. It is a gift you give to yourself. It is a way to free your heart, to let go of the past, to find peace." She looked into her mother's eyes. "Do you think I can forgive them?" she asked, her voice filled with sorrow. "Do you think I have the strength to let go, to move on, to heal?" Her mother let out a beautiful smile. "You have always been strong, Jane. You have carried my spirit with you, kept my memory alive, honored my legacy. But now it is time to let go, to release the pain, to find peace. You have the power to heal, to bring light to a world that has been darkened by hatred and fear, to live your life as a young priestess." She knew that her mother was right, that she held the power to forgive, to bring peace, to heal the wounds that had scarred her life. But she also knew that the journey would be difficult, that forgiveness would not come easily. But she felt the strength to try, to take the first steps toward healing. And as she slept, her mother's spirit watched over her, a silent guardian, a presence that filled the room with warmth and light, a reminder of the love that had shaped her life, the legacy that she carried within her heart. The next day, when the villagers came back to plead with her, she asked them of someone, and they said that the person was alive. Instantly, Okili was brought to her by the next day. It was her first time seeing her after that early morning. She felt like hugging her tight, like lifting her up. Okili had turned into an old woman walking with a stick. The poor old woman was surprised. She searched her conscience several times to know if she had committed an offense. Her only offense was that she gave the little girl away to a slave trader, but it was to preserve her life. Jane asked others to give them chance. They all feared that Okili had done something bad. Even the poor woman was terrified. Then Jane took her inside, hugged her tight, and whispered, "Okili, my mother's best friend, it is me, Jane, your child Jane." Okili's eyes widened in shock, her mouth ajar. Jane placed her head on the old woman's shoulder, as both of them wept silently. Jane prepared for her journey back to the village. She had not returned since that fateful early morning, and the thought of walking among the people who had taken everything from her filled her with both dread and resolve. Her mother's words lingered in her mind, a quiet reminder of the path she had chosen. She knew that forgiveness was not a simple act, but a journey, a process of letting go. She had spent years holding on to her anger, nursing her wounds, allowing her pain to define her. But now she felt a new strength, a calmness that had not been there before. As she approached the village, she could see the toll the curse had taken. The fields lay barren, the huts crumbling. People moved through the village like shadows, their faces lined with sorrow, their eyes filled with despair. When they saw her, a hush fell over the crowd. But they all wondered why Okili walked along with her. Why was she talking and laughing with Okili? They gathered around her, their faces a mixture of fear and hope, their voices filled with whispers. But no one recognized who she was. Jane stood before them, her gaze steady, her heart filled with a strange calm. She knew that they were waiting for her to speak, to condemn them, to punish them for their cruelty. But she did not speak of vengeance or retribution. Instead, she looked into their eyes, one by one, and saw the fear, the sorrow, the shame that haunted them. She felt a wave of compassion wash over her, a quiet understanding that went beyond words. An elder stepped forward, his voice trembling. "We have suffered greatly, priestess. We know that we were wrong, that we committed a terrible sin. We can't find the one we are looking for. Please lift the curse. We will do whatever you ask." Jane met his gaze, her voice calm and steady. "The one you have been looking for is here with you." All the villagers swept their eyes around. The sounds of people murmuring filled the air. "Where is she? Who is she talking about?" they wondered. The moment silence returned, Jane continued, "You took my mother from me, took my brother, took everything that I held dear. You did this out of fear, out of ignorance, out of hatred. And for years, I have carried the weight of that loss, the pain of that night. The crowd fell silent, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. They braced themselves, expecting her to unleash the full force of her anger, to condemn them to a lifetime of suffering. But instead, she took a deep breath, her voice soft and gentle like that of her mother. I have come not to condemn you, but to offer you a chance for redemption. I cannot erase what you have done, cannot undo the pain that you have caused, but I can give you a way to make amends, to heal the wounds that you have inflicted. The villagers looked at her, their faces filled with confusion, with hope, with a glimmer of something they had not felt in years. They waited, their breaths held as she continued. Okili nodded her head, urging her to go ahead. You must rebuild what you have destroyed. You must honor the spirits of the ancestors, make offerings to the spirits, seek their forgiveness. She turned to Okili. You all made her childless because she gave birth to a baby that is different from the ones you people have been seeing. You fear what you don't understand. I only want you all to know that being different is not a curse. It doesn't mean that the child is a curse or cursed. We are all humans with souls and blood. All the villagers jumped up in jubilation. The chief elder bowed his head, his voice filled with gratitude. We will do as you ask, priestess. We will make amends. We will seek forgiveness. We will carry the memory of your mother, of your brother, with us always. We will not forget. We will never kill babies with pale skin. Jane felt a weight lift from her heart. A quiet peace settled over her like a gentle rain. She felt the first stirrings of hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness. As she looked out over the crowd, she knew that they too felt that hope, that possibility of redemption, of healing. And in that moment, she felt the presence of her mother, a gentle warmth that filled her heart, a reminder of the love that had shaped her, the legacy that she carried within her soul. One day, as she walked through the village, she came upon a small shrine that the villagers had built in honor of her mother. It was a simple structure made of wood and stone. She knelt before the shrine, her heart filled with a quiet gratitude, a deep sense of peace. She whispered a prayer, a tribute to the mother who had shaped her, who had given her the strength to forgive, to heal, to transform her pain into something beautiful. As she rose to leave, she felt a hand on her shoulder, a gentle touch that filled her with warmth. She turned to see Okili standing beside her, her face lined with joy, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, priestess, she said, her voice choked with emotion. You have always been a great child, Jane. I am happy that I am alive to witness a day like this. Jane placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice soft, filled with emotions. I have two mothers. One is alive while one watch over me from beyond. You are not just my mother's friend. You are my mother, and you will stay with me until the day you join your ancestors. Jane and Okili smiled simultaneously, their hearts filled with a quiet joy, a sense of fulfillment that went beyond words, and hand in hand they walked away. Being different is not a curse. Embrace and celebrate reality.